Hi, everybody. Please join me in welcoming back to the stage director Joe Wright. So I've got a couple questions, then we have time for a couple quick questions from the audience. I know this is a film you had been developing for some time. How and when did things come together for you to decide now is the time to make this movie?
June 28th, 2020. I know the date. I had been developing it with Erica Schmidt for a couple of years, and we'd finally gotten it to a place where I thought, okay, this is good. And so I called up Eric Fellner and said, okay, Eric, we're ready to go. Let's make this. And he said, you're mad. We're in a pandemic. The world is shut down. No one's making anything. But I felt having been in lockdown for 4 months and not had any human contact, now was the time to make a film about human connection. So I said, come on, let's just do it. What do you think the likelihood of us being able to do this now is? And he said 5%. I said, great, I'll take it. We shopped it around, and indeed, no one was making anything until Mike DeLuca raised his hand and said, "Yep, I am." He said, "I'm betting on a future for cinema because if I don't, I'd be betting against it," which I was very moved by, and I felt we'd obviously found our home. So we went from first to fifth gear very, very quickly.
Good. And can you talk, so two choices, casting Peter and eschewing the prominent nose. Can you talk about coming to both of those decisions for the film?
Yeah, the thing had originally been written for as a theatre musical, and I first saw that when I was invited by Haley Bennett to go and see a very rough workshop production up at the Goodspeed Theatre in Connecticut. In fact, I think it was at the Chester Theatre in Chester, which is like a tiny 120-seater theatre. And I was really blown away by it. Peter was already playing Cyrano at that point. She hadn't written it for him. They're married. She hadn't written it for him, and he had kind of, I think maybe even begged to be allowed to play the role. And I saw it, and I'd always loved the story. As a kind of odd, as a teenager, I felt sort of odd and out of place and unworthy of love and affection. And so I was, a huge fan of the Gérard Depardieu version, but I couldn't ever think of bettering that or how one would make it different, other than perhaps doing it in English. And then seeing Pete play that, I just realized there was a far more authentic version possible. So I asked Haley's permission, and she agreed. So then I went and approached Pete and Erica that night, actually, the night I first saw it, and they said yes, and that's when we started developing the movie.
Speaking of the Depardieu version, as a text itself, Cyrano, why do you think artists like yourself continue to be drawn to different interpretations of it?
I think artists in general feel unlovable. I think maybe they are unlovable. I don't know. And I think there's something about the idea of creating a world through writing love letters and poetry, or through painting pictures, or through making films, there's something about a kind of ability to create your own world, make the world as you want it to be, that appeals to artists, possibly.
I think all artistic ambition aside, I can think of another great reason to make this movie, which is you get to go to these locations for a couple of months or so. Can you talk a little bit about where you shot both sort of the bulk of the film and then also the battle scenes, which looked so different?
Yeah, so they said, all right, we'll give you the money to make it, but you've got to make it, no, that's not true, actually. I said, okay, give us the money to make it. I've got an idea how to do it. I said, we're going to go to the island of Sicily, which had had a very low COVID rate to start with, and go to this town called Noto, which is in the southeast of the island, which was a World Heritage Site, but obviously had no tourism going on. So it was a place where we were able to create a very tight bubble pod. And that was our kind of COVID safety huddled down, and we just spent 4 months there making the movie. And we brought over like 350 artists and craftspeople and actors, and used local extras from all over, from America and Canada, but also sort of pertinently for me being British and this whole Brexit thing that's going on, French, Italian, Danish, Belgian, Spanish, and so we brought this community together, and we hunkered down and made a movie. And then I knew I wanted something that would be a very stark contrast to the kind of honey-coloured Baroque architecture of Noto for the battle sequence, and there was Mount Etna staring at us. So we thought, we'll shoot up a live volcano, which seemed like a really good idea at the time, as it hadn't erupted for 30 years. And I said, I don't want snow. I like the black, the red uniforms against the black. This was, this great. I did all these illustrations and what have you, and they said, yes, it's fine. It never snows till February, and we were shooting in December, and then of course a week before we started shooting, and it was difficult enough. It's like 16,000 feet, so you can't breathe. There's no air, and you're working on kind of vertiginous sort of lava sand slope, so you just keep on rolling down the hill. Every time you put a camera down, it would just roll down the hill, and then it dumped 2 meters of snow on us. So that was about the most reckless decision of my career, probably.
2020.
Yeah, 2020. And then on the last day, the thing erupted. Literally, and we had spitting lava at us as we ran down the volcano. They talk about Mount Etna as being a goddess, and the goddess just wanted us off her back. And as we flew, that was December 18th, 2020, and as we flew at night off the island, and the red eye of the volcano was just staring at us. It was incredible.
I have one more question, and then we have time for any questions from the audience. I understand you recorded the singing in the film live. Can you talk about what that means, practically speaking, and also how that impacts what you're able to capture when you're making the film?
Yeah, I felt like I didn't want it to feel like a big kind of declamatory musical, some of which I like, but they're not really my bag. And I wanted a kind of sense of intimacy. I don't know who here knows The National, but The National are the band who wrote the music. And I love the kind of intimacy that you get from their albums. And I wanted to try and achieve that in the film. And that there would be no difference between the dialogue and how that developed naturally into the singing and out again. So we chose to record all the singing live on camera, which meant that the actors had to rehearse a lot. And then we had a backing track that was pre-recorded, and the actors had an earpiece in, and so they could hear the backing track, and sometimes they would just be singing to live piano. We had a live pianist there as well. And they sang. And the good thing is that it wasn't always perfect, in the sense that there are kind of cracks in the voices, and there are breaths in the wrong places, and I feel all of that gives the thing an intimacy, which therefore gives it an emotion, you know.
Great. Well, we have time for a question or two from the audience, in case anyone has any questions, volcano related or not. Yes, right there, I see a question.
I loved the choreography and the sequence where you had the people making bread. And I believe you had a scene like that in Anna Karenina, in the ball scene, I think. I wondered who did the choreography and how you had done
Same
that.
choreographer.
It's Sidi Larba?
Yeah, same choreographer. A guy called Sidi Larbi Shakawi, who is a Moroccan Belgian. And he and I met on Anna Karenina and have worked in the theatre a bit in England since. And then he came back to do this one. He's an amazing guy, Sidi. Sidi, by the way, means like a sir. It means you're a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, which is kind of cool. And he is the most focused person I've ever met in my life. Working with him, he is able just to change the angle of a wrist or a finger even, and achieve a completely different meaning. He's really an extraordinary guy.
Thanks, yeah, I thought the choreography was beautiful for that part.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? I see a hand over here. If you wait 1 second, there's a microphone coming.
Thanks. I was kind of really struck, first of all, like the movie seemed like it was like a big production. There were like all the music and all the people and the costumes and the background. And I was thinking about COVID. Like it seems like, I guess my question is that how is the movie industry doing? Because like things are stopped down, and usually I think that it takes like maybe a year or two for a movie to actually come out once it's made, and there's probably like you've exhausted like all the stuff that's been produced before COVID, and like they're not. I'm just guessing they're not producing that much the past year or two, and how's that going to affect how movies are coming out in the future, or am I just kind of that's not what's going on, or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, it was a nightmare, and it added about, I think it added about 3 or 4 million to the budget, all the COVID protocols, and that was on a budget of about $31
$million?
million. So that was quite damaging. I got my mum, who's a puppet maker and prop maker, to make all the leather masks that everyone's wearing. My mum made. She made 160 of them, so to protect extras and stuff. But to answer your question, the movie industry is surprisingly buoyant at the moment, especially with streaming services. They're no longer, we don't make films anymore. We make content. And the streamers are coming in and buying up crews for 24 months at a go. There's a lot being made under really odd circumstances, and everything keeps on getting shut down when you get a positive case, and then they reopen 2 weeks later, and so on. But people are watching a lot of stuff at home, and so there's so people are making stuff. I think the bigger problem. I think what's scary is what's happening with the theatrical experience.
Yes.
And films going straight to streaming services or day-and-date releases, and the concern I have, and I think is shared by a lot of us, is what's going to happen to the collective theatrical experience, which is why I kind of spoke about the heartbeat in the intro.
And MGM is doing a theatrical release of this film. And what time of year again? I forget when it is.
It opens in LA and New York on New Year's Eve, and then has a kind of platform spread out through to the beginning of February.
Got it. Well, thank God they are committing to that. And it's a reminder to tell your friends to go see this film when it does come out. Well, Joe, I want to thank you so much for making this film, bringing it here and sharing it with us. It is a breath of fresh air, this film.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Enjoy the night.